Aaron, could you please add some more? Because I think the one that I got failed, and now we're out again.
I added a bunch, but they haven't come up yet. It takes
okay.
a moment or two. I'll let you know when it's ready. Weird that it told you it failed, though. Like, should have just said there weren't any available.
Hey, everyone. Apparently, we are live. Or not.
No, but you should be able to start one now.
I'm starting. Yeah, but it went on YouTube anyway. Okay. So, hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Jitsi community call. We're having a bit of an issue with, we were having a bit of an issue here, so I'm sorry, I apologize for the delay. So today we have Jens Christian and Renato who are going to talk about their Jitsi installation in the Swiss NREN, which is the National Research and Education Network in Switzerland. As usual, we're actually, however, going to start with an update from the Jitsi team. We're really excited about Jens Christian and Renato joining us, so really looking forward to that. So let's get to the team update quickly. Now, we have a couple really nice features coming along. We're adding a pre-join call screen to Jitsi that's going to let you select your devices, select whether you're joining with or without video, with or without audio. So that's going to be nice. And we also have a significant some things moving around within the meeting that will make it easier to see how you invite other people to join your meeting. And hopefully we've made the locking functionality a little bit easier to find. Some of that is we're trying to make work properly and look nicely with the lobby functionality that we're working on. So Zoli and team are on that part. And also, Zoli, you've been working on adding some warnings for when people are using meeting names that are too short. Would you like to give us a 30-second overview of what that's about?
Absolutely. So this feature just got pushed into PR updated, so it should be available in master probably today, tomorrow. So it's actually brand new. This is a feature that is intended to help people avoid those kind of meeting names that are not safe enough, as we call it. Names like the call, currently, or like we had some reports about people being in the test room or in any other like very common names. We are now showing a warning. It's not like it's going to block anyone. It's just a warning that if you are trying to join or you are already in a meeting that has a not secure enough name, then this will warn you. That's the feature now. We are fine-tuning the algorithm how to decide whether the room name is safe or not. We have an initial version now. I hope it will be fine.
Thank you very much, Zoli. In the meantime, our collaboration with Firefox has been going on nicely. They are currently working on Transport CC. Jaya, would you like to talk a little bit about the status of things there?
Yeah, sure. So there were two features that we were waiting for the Mozilla guys to add in Firefox, RTX and Transport CC. So RTX is in FF Nightly, but it's behind a flag now. And they plan to enable it by default once they add support for RRID. And Transport CC is the other one that we were waiting on, and it's available in Firefox beta. But then we identified a couple of issues with the Transport CC, and we have opened bugs, and we are actually working with them. to get those fixed before it moves on to stable. So the bandwidths are coming in low and simulcast is broken. But yeah, they're working on getting it fixed and we're working with them. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jaya. Saul recently also started an effort on moving everything to a documentation handbook. Saul is not with us here, but would someone want to give a summary on this? Brian, Boris?
I think so is the main man here, but the address is jitsi.github.io/handbook. And the purpose of the project is to concentrate all of our docs here. So I think the plan is to start moving documentation there.
Right.
Again,
so I'm sorry. Indeed, all documentation is going to, as it is a little bit challenging to find right now on across the various repositories in MD files here and there. It's going to slowly start moving toward this handbook. We're going to try and keep links to from the old locations. Tombstones, I think, would be right. Next, I have a message from Saul, who couldn't be here today, but he wanted me to relay this to the community. On our last call, we mentioned a bug marshalling program. We launched it, and we'd like to thank Fabian, Thomas, Suguru, and Echolon for volunteering. They have been incredibly helpful. Indeed, more than 100 issues triaged in a few days. This is amazing. Super helpful. Thank you very much. On another topic, he actually just wanted to talk about the handbook thing as well. So I'm not going to repeat that. Now, George has recently been working on revamping the way that browsers indicate to the bridge what video streams that they're going to want to receive. George, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, but the idea is to signal video. So traditionally we had selected and pinned endpoints. This has been the case since, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And there have been multiple discussions on changing that because it doesn't offer us the flexibility that we would like to have. And so the idea is to have a video constraint message that the client is supposed to send to the bridge with stuff like, for this endpoint, I would like to have an ideal resolution of 720p at 30 frames per second. Or for this set of endpoints, I would like to see 180p all the time. So please, bridge, send me 180p streams for these endpoints. And effectively, this will replace the pinned endpoint message event and the previous one that I talked about, the selected endpoint message event. And so we have a complete replacement, which offers us much more flexibility to allow us to do more interesting and different kinds of layouts for the client in the future.
Well, I specifically am super excited about this, but mainly for the reason that it would that is sort of a precondition to us bringing back support for layer suspension. For those of you who remember, we used to have this functionality where if everyone is in tile view, like we are here, or if everyone is watching, let's say, Alice in a call, then Bob can stop encoding and sending out his HD resolutions. So we think this is going to have a significant impact on CPU utilization without users having to tweak with their own quality. CPU utilization is something that comes back from a lot of users as potentially being a little bit too gluttonous. So what we'd like to do there is have a stab at that in the future and see if there's anything we can improve. But also something that came to our attention is that in many cases, antivirus applications seem to somehow make this worse. This has only recently come up. Apparently, other WebRTC providers are seeing similar issues. That's something to look into as well. In the meantime, if you are seeing such issues in the wild, do check out for potential conflicts with the antivirus application. And then finally, Boris, you wanted to give a heads up to everyone about Boris and Brian, I think you wanted to give everyone heads up for the upcoming drop of support for XMPP component node for the bridge.
Yeah, so when we added the MOOC mode in the bridge, that was in order to address a bridge connecting to more than one GCOFO. And at that point, we softly deprecated the component connection. A few months ago, we migrated Debian packages to use the new MOOC mode. And they have been since, I think that was September or October. So we're proceeding with removing more and more support for this. Last week, we removed support in GCOFO for discovering bridges through the PubSub channel that was previously used for that. So today, the component can still be used, but there's limited functionality in that. Load balancing is not available with that. And we are planning to soon completely deprecate the feature and remove it from the bridge, and following that from GCOFO. The main reason is to reduce technical debt, because we have a bunch of code that we can remove and not worry about.
Thank you very much, Boris. And with that, our weekly update on feature functionality, on new functionality, new features and changes is complete. And we're now going to switch to Jens Christian and Renato and their presentation of the Jitsi deployment in the Swiss NREN. Guys, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. And first of all, thanks for everything you've been doing. You've been, even if you probably didn't know, you've been a great help to us in the last couple of months. So
you're most welcome. Thank you for the kind words.
My name is Jens Christian. I'm the team lead at Switch. I work in a team for managed application services. Renato is my colleague. He's also team lead for collaboration services. He's the product manager of video solutions, among other things. And I have been working on cloud infrastructure. We run our own cloud infrastructure, and we have deployed Jitsi on top of that. So I have prepared a presentation that sort of walks us briefly through what we're doing, and maybe I can find, here it is. I find where I am. Right. So the first question we usually get is what is an NREN? And I actually need to click into the PowerPoint window. That helps. An NREN is a National Research and Education Network. And National Research and Education Networks are organizations that exist in every country, or as far as almost every country, and provide or start to provide network services to universities or tertiary education institutions. So you might have heard of Internet 2 in the old days, the research-oriented Internet. That is something that NRENs take care of. So one part of Switch is running a 2,500 kilometers of fiber network that connects every university and research institutions, things like the CERN in Geneva or other high computational facilities with bandwidth. We run 100 gigabit backbones across the universities. And Switch is what do we say? We are the competent and trusted partner for digitalization issues that concern education, research, and innovation. So it has grown from a pure university point of view to include research institutes, it includes hospitals, university hospitals, it includes technology startups, spin-offs from universities. We are providing various services in the IT level to them. And we have a bunch of offerings, technological offerings, like the network that I mentioned, or the video services, or infrastructure. We also do a lot of community work. We have education communities, e-learning communities that we support, law regarding IT in the education, procurement, and so on. And we are a foundation, so we are not a company per se, but we're also not state-owned. We are something in between. We have a mandate from the state and from the founding universities. We are organized as a private foundation. That gives us a lot of flexibility in how we operate. The customers, as I alluded to, is the community, the Swiss universities, the academic sectors. There's the organizations around that. We have a bunch of commercial customers. One of the things that we also take care of is we are the registry for the CH and LI domains. So we run the DNS backbones and servers. We take care of the security of the CH domain space. And we have, of course, commercial customers, partly to the domain names, but also financial institutions that use our security services. We are working with energy and logistics companies that have a demand for security services. So that's a very broad range of things that we work on. And as I briefly mentioned, we have a bunch of offerings, everything from network to video management and everything in between. I'm not going to go through all of that, but for what we've been doing now, I think important is the network that we run, the infrastructure services, our OpenStack cloud service that we have, and the video management. That sort of came together in the story that we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. And just a very brief view of our customers. Basically, every university or university of applied science is our customer. So you may have heard of the prestigious ones like ETH, the Technological High School, or EPFL, which is now in the whole COVID crisis, is epidemiologists, what a word, that work on the distributed privacy tracing application. They come out of EPFL. There are various, a bunch of customers. So where did we? What happened is we've been busy doing the stuff we do every day, and then SARS-CoV happened, and maybe Renato can speak to what happened somewhere in the beginning of March. When the crisis really started to materialize in Europe and in Switzerland. So Renato, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was working as usual, but suddenly my phone started ringing like every day more and asking for licenses of video conferencing, because we were running 2 video conferencing systems. One was based on Video, or however you call it, and the other one was Adobe Connect. And there we have a bunch of licenses that are for all the universities in Switzerland. And usually we have like 100 users online with Adobe Connect in whole Switzerland at the same time, concurrent, and never more than 50 with the H323 anyway, video conferencing systems. But suddenly people were asking if we are ready to support Switzerland when everybody stays at home and wants to do schooling over video conferencing. And turns out we were not, because the license were A, very expensive, and B, these were kind of old systems bound to hardware servers, so we could not scale with the servers. We could buy some more license to satisfy a basic need, but we cannot support the whole education, higher education with video demand. So I was mailing Jens Christian and asking him, I heard about Jitsi. What do you think? Can we put this on our cloud to scale appropriately? And well, he wrote me back like 2 hours later with a URL where I could log in, and I was in a Jitsi meeting, and that's where it started. Maybe
That's
you
really
take over
awesome.
from here.
Exactly. So the first prototype was actually, I looked at up the dates, March 5th. After Renato's mail, it had a basic service running in a couple of minutes. And the next day, I frantically tried to get Shibboleth working. Shibboleth is a SAML-based authentication that we are heavily using. And this is where our friends at Renater come in. They have done a lot of work in the past of getting Shibboleth working. And I see that after all of these months, I still cannot spell Jitsi correctly. So their documentation, of course, was outdated, and I grabbed one of our identity engineers, sat him down at the keyboard, and we got Shibboleth compiled for Nginx and installed. And basically within 24 hours, we had a running system that was protected by or authenticated. And I think Renato had 5 institutions already ordering their own systems at that, like 24 hours later. And we spent that was a Friday, the 6th of March, and we spent a frantic weekend building more and more of these servers. So basically we had one VM with a signaling node and a video bridge on it, and getting Shibboleth to work. And we realized at one point that we couldn't go on. We had a bunch of technical problems, obviously, because we basically had no clue. We haven't worked with video conference software, so we probably made every rookie mistake in the book. We forgot to turn on UDP connections and had everything going through TCP, and we miscalculated the sizing of the VMs and God knows what. So we were a bit frantic at that in the first week. We realized that
that's actually a question that comes a lot. Sizing specifically, what sizes did you go through?
I think we started off with 4 CPU, 16 gigabyte of memory machines for everything, Chicofo and Nginx and the video bridge, and that worked reasonably well until some of the systems started to get heavy load, at which point we just saw the CPU load explode and the machine breaking down. At which point we looked at one of the things we looked at is to create conferences that only had view access. So we cobbled together a prototype of a viewer application. If you had a room name, you could enter that into a dialog, and you get the iframe API would just with all the Chrome removed, so you couldn't turn on your microphone, you couldn't turn on your video camera, you had access to chat and raising your hand and hanging up, and try to use that for some of the for the classroom use, because that was what people were expecting. We had some really fun conferences when people tried to set up a conferencing system with 20, 30 participants in our first week. And sort of looking back, I'm surprised how patient they were with us, because it didn't really work well. That was in the TCP phase of connection, so everything was broken, really. But we got better. And what we ended up with, spending the next, or basically every week since then, every waking moment since beginning of March, was to get this up and running. And we have an infrastructure now that has something like 26 signaling nodes. So for each institution can choose to have their own signaling node with their own URL and authentication to their shibboleth backend. So only people from that institution can actually create conferences. And we realized that some of these universities were high in demand or demanding higher capacity, and some of them were not that intensive. So we thought about how to implement a system that would allow us to scale that. And what we came up with is a system where we have 32 video bridges across 2 geographic regions in Switzerland, in Zurich region, and in the French part in Lausanne. And every video bridge connects to all of these 26 signaling nodes. And I really hope that what you are depreciating now isn't going to kill the setup that we have, because every video bridge is connecting to all of the institutions, and the signaling nodes can choose from whatever video bridge is least loaded.
No, actually, we do something similar as well. And the only thing that is changing is how the bridges connect to the Prosody instances. And
Okay.
I would be surprised if you're doing component-based today. Is that what you're doing? Do you know?
I don't know.
I don't believe you would be.
You
because
couldn't do.
Okay.
Exactly. Component-based connects to a single XMPP server.
Okay. No. We use the multi-user chat room.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
the modern way. You're doing great.
Cool. Good. What we also realized is we managed to crash and burn spectacularly when we brought the whole company onto a Jitsi video meeting. Said, let's try how good this scales, and it didn't. In the beginning, we had something like 40, 50, 60 people in a conference, and nothing worked really. We had browsers freezing and whatnot. So we spent a lot of time improving the user experience. I'm coming to that in a later slide. We also realized that we probably should look at streaming, and streaming to YouTube wasn't really an option. So we decided to set up our own streaming platform. We basically searched the internet for RTMP servers and picked the first one that showed up in our search engine of choice, and talked to the guys at Ant Media, set up a system there that we're running. We have 15 Jibri servers that also connect to all of the institutions, and we can turn on and off recording and streaming for each of the institutions. We also got complaints about netting and firewalling, so we started to set up Croturn. And again, I must stress, we are not experts, so we cobbled something together from the internet, and it seems to work. We have no idea why it works, but it does. And I've seen from the comments, some of the comments on our code, that there is room for improvement there. But all in all, we have a fairly stable system, and we're serving quite a bit of conferences. That's one of the installations. We also have a second installation with just one signaling node and something like 16 or 18 video bridges for a startup company in the education market. They have a really cool classroom in the browser thing, and are trying to work with us to get that working. Here we have some problems with conferences being terminated that we're still investigating. We're not sure where it's really difficult to get. But all in all, I think the conferences that we've seen now are pretty stable, and nothing compared to where we were 2 months ago. And I've heard a lot of comments from our users that there is a significant improvement on how we do. So we tweaked the system, and we've done a lot of things and try to get performance here and there better, and I think it shows. And we've had successful video conference now with 30 people, all of the videos on, and that worked flawlessly.
Do you currently limit your maximum number of participants then?
No.
No limit, but you usually seen it, so you go to about 30, 40 people.
30 people is something I have seen personally that works really well. I've heard about conferences with 20 people regularly that works well. Our stand-up meetings are 15 to 20 people every day. That works well. But on the other hand, we also get reports of conferences with 20 people where there's just 1 or 2 video streams and everybody else is receiving that don't work. And we're still trying to figure out why that is. So help appreciated there. It's really, we're sort of poking into the mist and trying to find something. The logs are really inconclusive. I asked that in I think 2 weeks ago in the community call.
Yeah, we could we could talk about ways to debug that. Maybe we should reserve a few meetings.
We'd love to
at the end of the presentation.
We'd love
that'd
to.
be interesting for everyone.
So this is the very simplified architecture diagram. We have the all of the signaling nodes and the front end, the load balanced video bridges and the jibberies and a couple of co-turn servers. In terms of numbers, this is graphs from March 16 to May 1st. We see something like 15 to 1600 conferences every day during the week. And as you can see, it's growing something like 10% per week. So I don't know how that compares to anybody else's numbers, because it seems like nobody's talking about how many conferences they run. But I think we're quite happy. We've had, I don't know, 2 or 3 million meeting minutes since we started, and we see, I don't know, something like 30,000-40,000 participants over the course of these months here. So that it seems to work, and it's meeting a demand in our users, for our users. So things the challenges that we came through is really we learned by drinking from the fire hose, and we had. This is great. I can correct my presentations in real time. We had quite a lot of problems getting to know everything, getting to know how the components worked and how that fit together. I don't know how many times we set up and tore down the Jitsi instances. Something we did right from the start was to automate everything. We have Ansible scripts, and there's a link to that at the end. We couldn't have done that without heavy automation to try things. A challenge is to keep up with the constant stream of updates that is coming from you guys. We've basically had weeks where we deployed the whole infrastructure completely new right out of master every second day or something. I think this is the first week where we didn't have a release on the weekend to update, because we're keeping track of what is happening, and it seems like the current changes aren't that pressing to our needs. So we're trying to sort of get into a rhythm that is not as stressful in keeping up that infrastructure. On the way we built this streaming and recording solution, we have made changes to the Jitsi Meet UI so that it can show the link for a recording. Our jibberies automatically upload to an S3-like backend in our cloud and provide a link back to the Jitsi Meet so the users can download the recordings after the fact. We got the streaming servers to run. We have a Vue front end that is able to stream. If you know the stream key, and you can just type in that into a URL, and you get the RTMP streams. And we've done a lot of work on the performance optimizations, both on the back end and the front end. We removed the audio indicators that helped a lot on CPU usage. We also, I don't know if we at least enabled the overlay suppression. I just think I heard from you, Emil, that it doesn't even work at the moment. But
Yes, unfortunately it doesn't, but
okay, the
keep it enabled, I guess, and then it will land eventually.
The placebo effect in any case is great, and we saw the changes to Firefox and Safari support landing, and then we pushed them. So that it has been a sort of a constant, not an uphill battle, but an uphill winning, and the system is in a totally different state than we were a couple of weeks ago, and we will actually, our company we had larger and larger meetings. We will have an all-hand meeting this week with the whole company that is run through Jitsi with the streaming support. So this is something that our board
Do you
wouldn't
do
have
your
been
streaming to
comfortable.
YouTube then?
No, we stream to the Ant Media server that we have running on premise.
All right, got it.
We don't stream on YouTube. That wouldn't fly with our customers. And what else? Challenges in the future is we actually want to try to understand what turn and stun actually does and how you configure them correctly. That's something that I also realized now that the European education or NREN community has been working on. There is the turn servers all across Europe for educational purposes. So we had a talk with people from our community that run those, and that might be something that we will hook into with ProCity plugins that can authenticate against those turn servers, because they generate rotating credentials. We're using callstats.io for monitoring, but we are lacking a bit in a global overview how our systems are working. So we're looking at Prometheus-based systems that give us more of an overview over how many conferences do we run in total, what is the network bandwidth, things that callstats don't give us in the way we'd like them. As I said, we want to get into a sustainable upgrade support path. Our engineers have been quite racking up many overtime hours and weekend works, and we need to get that under control. There is the auto-scaling of video bridges that we're looking at, because we are assuming that we are overkilling what we're doing. And we want to move the signaling nodes to containers or Kubernetes so that we can deploy and manage them faster. For now, it's every university gets their own VM, and while we can set it up fairly easily, we think we could do again optimizations on how much hardware we're throwing at them. And then finally, this all started out as a skunkworks project with Renato's email a couple of weeks ago, and as a company, we need to decide how and if we want to move that forward if and when the crisis ends, and if we want to turn this into an offering that we will provide to the higher education market in Switzerland for a fee then in the future. I'm sure you are aware of that. All of that costs a lot of money, and at the moment we can sustain that. But if we want to turn this into a service, there needs to be some kind of business model behind all of that.
Yeah, well, whenever that future arrives, right?
Exactly. Whenever that future arrives.
Post-COVID, it's a bit uncertain at this point, I suppose.
Yeah. And finally, we have, if you want to play with what we've been doing, we have open sourced our Ansible scripts, and the config templates contain every modification and trick and performance optimizations that we know of at the moment. And we have had we got a lot of great feedback from the community about that, and that's really the joy of working with open source software, is that we can actually share and improve things for everybody. So that would be the very quick overview over what we've been doing and how we've been handling that.
All right, thank you very much. This was, I'm really impressed with everything that you've done, and you sort of went through a lot of it very casually. Believe me, everyone on this call understands how much work there is behind all the different phases that you had to go through. This is really, really cool. In many ways, this is you're actually doing very similar things to what we do in our own deployments. So there were a few topics that we said we can discuss now. They probably all relate to monitoring and then determining issues. So with regard to monitoring, I'll probably pass the boat here to others, but we get a lot of value currently, or rather until recently, we were very avid users of Datadog, and that was really working out well. We're moving away from Datadog at this point, and we're going to try other solutions as well. But there's that. We also have some CloudWatch. Would anyone like to complete this here, or maybe you could talk about what sort of data would you like to get out of your monitoring?
Well, for us, it's in the beginning when we started to understand the system, we were really the data that we get out of call stats was really helpful. About all where you see what each individual client is doing and what kind of problems they're experiencing, and it led us to discover quite a few things we could improve. As we move on, I'm not sure that we actually need that kind of end user visibility that we see what the end user clients are doing. We've gained enough experience now that we know that the system works, and if it doesn't work, it's probably a configuration issue at the client, wrong browser, bandwidth problems or something like that, and not the core of our system. We have enough confidence now that it basically seems to work. But what we are missing are consolidated networking graphs, how many packets we're moving out and in, how many we're dropping. We can get at all of that, but it's not integrated well enough, and the current version of call stats doesn't seem to give us that information at the moment. Our video bridges are silent into the void. We want to have an overview over the global system, how many conferences we have, how many users we have, and the way that the current monitoring setup is. It's very application specific in call stat terms, but not we have.
That is completely. You're absolutely right, and we do rely on call stats more for more application oriented stats, exactly as you say. Boris wanted to give a bit of an overview about how we add logging on our bridges.
Sure.
Yeah, so the data that you just mentioned is very important for us as well. And it's obviously not available in CoStats. It is available via the REST API of the bridge. If you query that, you can get instantaneous values. In order to get that in a usable way, what we have is a cron job that runs every minute that scrapes this, does a little bit of processing, and then pushes it to an external service. Right now, this is a simple Python script that is not open sourced. I don't know if parts of it can be.
Yeah, I think right now it's specific to Datadog because we're using the Datadog APIs as the just push immediately there. But we could become more generic and push straight to a stats.
It is pretty generic, actually. There's only a single API code to Datadog that we have in that script.
Yeah, and we're going to need to do that for ourselves anyway. So I like the idea of maybe moving that to the open source as well.
Cool.
Well, there we are, committed.
Wonderful.
I said I like the idea. I committed to nothing. No, I think it's a good.
That's
plan.
what I'm here for.
Oh, good point. Okay, we're committed. I'm in.
Good.
We also have a similar thing for Jacofo. Same kind of REST API, same kind of Python script, so we should look at that there too. And Jibri the same way.
But yeah, I'm actually quite surprised because that's sort of our, that's sort of the dashboard that where we sit and eat our fingers while things are going well or badly. So this is your life would become much easier.
The other piece You probably want something else that's monitoring some of the Linux kernel stats about like bytes in and out and things like that, as well as CPU utilization, memory utilization, and that's going to be dependent on where you're launched. So if you're in Kubernetes, you're going to probably want to use something different than if you're on bare nodes and anywhere in between. So we sort of left that as an exercise to the user, but I agree
we've got
with
that covered.
Guidance. Okay, cool. You've already got that stuff covered then.
Yeah. But that is sort of too low level of information. It doesn't tell the whole story.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, the combination of the custom stats from the services plus the aggregate stats of all of the bytes run through all of the video bridges would be sort of the best way to do it. And right now, Datadog gives us that pretty well because you can tag things and then combine them. And some of the other solutions we look at could do that as well, but it needs something on the back end that's doing some intelligence about taking all those stats and then making them presentable to you.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people have done that with Grafana as well. Like they're throwing it in either Prometheus or somewhere else, and then they are rendering it with Grafana. But I have not dug deeply into that yet.
We have a bunch of Grafana infrastructure for our OpenStack deployments. We just haven't had the time to extend that to include the Jitsi information. That's something we are looking at.
I saw in the community forum that somebody had uploaded a custom dashboard for Grafana for Jitsi, but yeah, it's the kind of thing I haven't had time for either. So whoever did that, thank you.
Yeah, no, that is something I saw as well. Problem is we cannot use the existing internals. Our Grafana infrastructure is reserved for the infrastructure deployment, and our infrastructure engineers say no, you cannot put service monitoring on top of our basic infrastructure monitoring. So you run your own. So we have to set up a Kubernetes cluster and set up Prometheus and so on and so forth. It's just the lack of resources.
Yeah,
there is only so many hours.
With that feeling.
So I had another question, Jens Christian. You mentioned that it's very challenging to keep up. What would make this easier for you? Because we do have the stable releases. So, but I assume just sticking with those is not going to be practical because you want some of the newer functionality, right?
Well, just from the last 2 months of experience, we could not stay with the stable releases because they basically just wouldn't work. For example, the Shibboleth integration. At the very beginning, we had to fall back to August 19 build of Jitsi to actually get Shibboleth running until some little string comparison bug was fixed in Chikofo on master, I don't know when, a couple of weeks ago. And all of the things that you have been doing in terms of supporting Firefox and performance improvements, they really make our life easier. So every time we deployed a new version of Unstable, we could see an improvement of overall performance and stability. So stable, unless you release to stable every day, I don't think there's something that
well,
make that
I guess
easier.
that wouldn't solve much of a problem if we do it every day. So, but do you have any suggestions for what would make your life easier so that your engineers wouldn't have to rack up a bunch of times on the weekends?
Actually, the thing is that now that it has turned into a used service, we cannot just stop the service during the day and kick out a bunch of classroom conferences while they're ongoing. So we have to stagger those early in the morning when at 6 o'clock or over the weekend. And so I don't think you could do anything to make that better, short of not dropping conferences when we update.
Well, we actually have mechanisms there on me Jitsi where we do actually have this notion of draining things. So the bridge, for example, can be drained, but also I don't know if you've seen some of our earlier presentations. We have a layer of HA proxies in front of everything, and in there we can we put entire GCOFOS and all the bridges behind them in a drain mode. So the way that we used to do most of our releases was we just deploy a bunch of new stuff, put the old stuff in drain, keep it going for a couple of days, and then we delete it. That was That was doable when we had several tens of servers around. Now having 8,000, it's a little bit harder. So we're looking for for other solutions. But we you know, you might want to think about that, just having a layer in front of the top layer domains there that would switch traffic. I mean, the challenge here is just sorry to interrupt. The challenge here is that you want whatever is in front of it to have the notion of an active conference, so that it would keep new participants toward active conferences going toward the old place.
Exactly.
So we did that with HA proxy, which worked up until a certain level of size. It's become challenging now, so we're working on a new product there as well, a combination of things actually. But you know, in many cases, it's actually very custom to the deployment. So it'd be an interesting topic to discuss going further, if there's anything generic we can put out there to help people.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aaron, I interrupted you.
I was going to say, at the very least, we could try publishing some of our existing HA proxy logic that sort of lets you decide what is a room and stick it to a particular spot for future, in case that's helpful to anybody.
Yeah. Actually, we would probably need to put HA proxy in front of our 26 engine active, and then have another. And then we'd like to have everything in Kubernetes, so it's easier to spin them up and down, instead of having 50 VMs that just do signaling and so on.
Yeah, exactly. There's like so many moving parts there that it's hard to decide this is exactly the ideal architecture when especially you're also trying to do things like move to Kubernetes. But if you just logically think of, instead of 26, you have 52 VMs, or maybe it's just 26 VMs with two of each, and you go blue-green deploys between them, and have the HA proxy know about both. That can be one way to handle it. And HA proxy has a native notion of ready or drain, that you can just say this endpoint is now ready. Any new conferences will come in and hit that one, and this one is now drain. So existing conferences keep going there, but any new ones will go to the ready. That kind of thing is sort of natively built into HA proxy, so you don't have to do much special there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so look into that. Other than that, just as a comment, is we've been living on the bleeding edge, and it has worked, which is, I find, surprising. Being around the software business for many years, so even though we're using unstable or master, it's I don't think we ever ran into a problem that was oh, let's roll back because it's all broken. So kudos, and they're really well done. It's
well,
not
thank you so
something
much for
that
saying this.
not something that I take for granted. That has really been painless in that regard.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much for your feedback. At that point, we're probably going to wind down and close the stream. At this point, we're going to publish this and advertise it on Twitter. This has been extremely helpful, Jens, Christian, and Renato. We'll be happy to have you again in the future whenever you'd like to share something with the general public out there. There have been tons of very positive comments on the YouTube stream. We're going to now go to our usual place, me, Jitsi / the call. Renato and Jens Christian, you're welcome to join us there. I'm sure there will be questions for you guys. With that, I'm going to cut the stream here and see you everyone next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.